So, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Long Road Back, a podcast all about helping athletes go through that hidden, messy middle bit of recovery and ultimately helping them feel less alone during that process. Thank you so much for all the support on the recent episodes. Honestly, it really does mean a lot to me to hear your feedback and hear your thoughts and see how the messages resonated with you throughout the episodes. So today I'm joined by someone who I've been very excited to have on the podcast. I actually, unlike other episodes, I actually really want to let her describe her experiences with injury and sport, because Julian has the most amazing story, and I've actually been following her on social media for quite a while now, and I think she posts some amazing content about injuries and the identity and well-being, and it's all things that we will absolutely come on to. So Julian, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome. So if you want me to, I can kind of jump in right now and kind of go through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also quite important to know, also you're in America. I think it's fascinating that, I think just first and foremost, I think it's amazing for me. You're my first overseas guest, by the way, which
Really?
that's what I'm really excited about.
That's
but
awesome.
I think I know, going transatlantic. But I think what's really stood out to me, even just before we get going, is that it's amazing how different countries, different sports, different experiences, and yet the themes are so similar. So I obviously let you go. Obviously, I'd love to hear, and let listeners to hear all about your story and journey with injuries and sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so honestly, very long story short, this was a 10-year injury for me. So I'm currently still fighting it, and I'm 22 years old. My diagnosis was chronic stress reactions and chronic shin splints. So stress reactions are pretty much just little cracks in your bones. And since mine was chronic, they were little cracks that wouldn't heal. So whenever I would run, the cracks would connect and break further and create those stress fractures that a lot of people know about now. So this started for me in 7th grade. So as you can imagine, in 7th grade, I'm 11 or 12, and I'm just not really taking it seriously because I'm going out playing sports with all my friends. And, at that point I was playing lacrosse year round, which was the sport I ended up playing in college. And I knew I wanted to play in college at that point. So I was kind of playing soccer, different sports, just, as a kid. And to be told that I had an overuse injury at that age was really confusing for me. That kind of started this vicious cycle of going to doctor's appointments, getting MRIs, and, hearing the same diagnosis over and over and over again. And, I would rest, I'd be in a boot. My fun fact is that I was in a boot every other month in opposite feet until I got to college. So I was just constantly rehabbing, constantly going to doctor's appointments and leaving school to go an hour and a half to Boston, Massachusetts for like the best doctors that we could find. It started in 7th grade and I dealt with it till college, and I just never got the answers to why I was getting these stress fractures. And you name it, I got it tested multiple times. So it was just such a mystery. So when I got to college, I was thinking, okay, the issue for me in high school and middle school was access to treatments. I had to leave school, waiting months for appointments. And it was hard for me to kind of manage my pain in between those, because especially for recruiting, I wanted to maximize my recruiting opportunities. And I really felt like I couldn't do that with this injury. So I was able to get recruited, and that was awesome. Really just a blessing in and of itself. I am very proud of myself that I was able to get to that point too. I feel like
Absolutely.
I was not able to give myself the credit that I deserved in those moments, but truly, like, I would pick certain games, certain tournaments to play in, and then I'd be in a boot for weeks after that trying to heal. So yeah, once I got to college, I was, I had the best medical team. I thought I would have, the treatments every single day would help. But really just with the level of play and, none of the treatments were working for me. So my whole freshman year, which is my first year in college or university, was pretty much dedicated to trying all sorts of treatments, looking at my medical history, trying to figure out the best course of action. And that ended up being surgery, which was in March of my freshman year. And that was 8-inch plates and 6 screws put into each shin. So that was, it was a lot for me to do. And, even before that, I had issues with daily activities, like going to class. I would often skip class and stay home and try to email my professors and see what I could do outside of class, because it was so painful for me to move around. And, I'm 19. It's ridiculous to have those issues at that age. So I ended up my last game before I got surgery, it was against Notre Dame, which is one of our biggest rivals here. And my surgeon was there kind of watching me warm up, and he ended up pulling me out of warm-ups, and he was like, I just can't
Wow.
watch this anymore. Like, you look like you're in so much pain. So from there, I got the surgery, did all of my rehab and everything, and I just was never able to fully recover. I got to, I think, like, we have little tracking things on our backs that we
Yeah.
wear, and it tracks like everything. So during rehab, I think I got to 80% of my max speed from my freshman year, which was still very injured speed, but I was like, I'll take it. 80%, this is great. So
100%. Yeah.
after that, though, I plateaued super bad. Like, I would, progress, and then I'd be out for the count for 2-3 weeks, and just, it was all out of whack, and couldn't go up and down stairs, had to relearn how to walk in the beginning, and it was just very brutal. So my medical team kind of got together and, talked to me initially about medically retiring, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I was so mad about it. Just because I wanted to, have that mentality as an injured athlete. People want you to be, back on the field. So I wanted to be positive, and people always talk about, if you have a negative mindset in your recovery process, like, it's not going to do any good. So that was ingrained in me to be positive. So hearing that they were kind of in my head, I was like, wow, they're giving up on me. Like, how, like, if they're giving up on me, then what am I supposed to do? So, but then at the end of the day, I knew it was the best thing for me, just because I was having, like, getting out of bed was so hard, going up and down stairs, and just constantly staring at my feet as I was walking because I was scared of hurting myself more. I knew it was the best thing for me. So that was kind of where the injury started. And, post medical retirement is a whole other story too. But if you have any questions from that so far, I'd love to answer those.
No, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. There's so much I'd love to unpack there. And obviously, we will come on to that kind of life after lacrosse. And I think obviously that would be an important caveat to look at. But the first thing the thing that actually struck me the most was actually something you said at the end there. And it was to do with the language used, both almost in your head and the way it was said to you about almost about the retirement process. Because for so many of us, and we see all the time, isn't it, that everyone always stresses injuries an opportunity, or you come back stronger. And it's very, very positive language, and it's heavily reinforced. Almost so much so that the idea that you genuinely have to slow down isn't actually considered. And I was just thinking about that when you mentioned there, the idea that, I assume maybe, people telling you to get back on the field, you wanted to get back on the field, and then it felt like they were giving up on you. I'd love if you can kind of expand on that, because I think that's honestly a theme that so many of us resonate with, that idea that all of a sudden, it's not, almost like we have to understand that it's not a weakness to slow down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's really interesting too. I want to preface before, like, my medical team, my coaches, my teammates, like, everybody did everything in their power to get me back on the field. And it was just my body wasn't responding. So everything that I talk about further, like, it was hard for people to understand my injury too, because people couldn't see mine. I mean, it's not a joint that swells or anything like that. Like, it's my shin. So it's a really hard thing for people to kind of wrap their heads around. So I mean, I think language is really, really important too, because, I had my own interpretation of what they were saying, and I was kind of grabbing onto the negative things in the moment, because I'm like, wow, they're telling me that they're worried about my future health. They're worried about me going up and down stairs when I'm 30. They don't want me to be able to carry my kids. Like, stuff like that was really scary.
Yeah.
And I think they, the entire time, you're going to come back stronger, and this is a 90+% success rate. Every single treatment that I did was 90+% or higher, like, success rate. So, in my head, I'm like, okay, so it worked for 90% of other people. Why isn't it working for me? And I think with that too, like, that positive, like, what did you say? Like, rehab and injuries opportunities, really interesting, because some people do come back 20 times stronger. Like, rehab is no joke, and you will get stronger in every aspect of your game and your physical. But for some people, that's just not the case. And I feel like that is injuries as an opportunity is a great way to look at it, but it is also hard for people to grasp if it's just not that way for you. And it's like your rehab is not going to plan. And that's just really, really frustrating that you're part of that such like small percent that it's just not going your way. But I do think like language is really important too, just for teammates. I feel like I could go on a tangent about this too. Like the way you talk
Yeah.
to your team, coaches, and how you relay information is really, really important because you're in such a vulnerable position physically and mentally when you're going through injuries and rehab. So, in hindsight, I know like with conversations after fact, my coaches were really, really supportive of me and they really did feel for me. It's just really hard in the process because they've got so many things that they're worrying about too. They got their whole team. But I will say like it's a really interesting concept. And I saw you posted about this earlier today and I was like, that is so interesting too, because I've heard that all the time. Oh, you're gonna come back stronger, yada yada. And I have that in my head, but it's just really not the case. So, and you come out stronger in different ways too. I want to say that as well as, I feel like I have so much perspective now on everything. Like you said, there's such a common theme with, inside of sports and outside of sports. So if I didn't go through all of this, I feel like I would be a completely different person and, that could have.
No, it's honestly I'm resonating so much with what you say, and I think I actually, yeah, the reason it came to mind was because I did actually post literally about it earlier
Yes,
today.
I saw that. So
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, that's so funny. Yes, because I actually saw posts similar to you. I think I saw a lot of, and growing up in a rugby environment, and I think exploring that team thing in a second will be really interesting and similar to lacrosse as well. That you want to be there for your teammates. I think it's one of the I'm very proud to say it's one of the key parts of who I am is that team orientated person. I love working in teams. You work hard for each other. It's part of who we are. I just found, and I was so interested to hear you say it, and then a very similar experience that sometimes when it's you'll be fine, I'll just get back in the gym. So for me, I mean, it's fun to talk about your feet and the shins. I'm really struggling with my feet at the moment, and it's that sometimes you can't just go and do an upper body session in the gym because you're in so much pain from your lower body. But sometimes, and especially about your shins and the fact that it's quite hard to see, it can be so hard to explain to your teammates. No, like I want more than anything to do this. Of course, I know injury is an opportunity. Physically anyway. Like I understand that, I really do. But then the other side of this, okay, but the more I'm trying to think it's this opportunity, the more I keep telling myself I've got to go and do these things. When in actual fact, my body is telling me I can't do that.
Yeah.
The more I want to go up there, the worse I'm going to feel about what's in front of me. And I think for me, the more I've actually allowed that sense of acceptance to go, yes, it's an opportunity, as you rightly say, in multiple different ways, not just physically, opportunities to expand our identity and whatnot. But I think the more I challenge myself and went, I've got to be able to get back in the gym. I've got to work on my core then. I've got to do stretching. It's like, right, let's just take a step back.
Yes.
Your mental health is the most important thing here. Let's not burn ourselves out and take your time. So I really, really resonate with what you're saying there. I'd love to just touch on the teammate aspect there. And we talked briefly off air about the, idea of pushing through and doing more. So I'd love to hear from you a bit more how you found that experience of, desperately wanting to play for the team, but also balance that with understanding that, sometimes you have to slow down for your body.
Yeah, that was a really hard thing for me too, because obviously like there's so much, I won't say like hype and just like excitement around going and playing for like a higher level team, whatever that may look like for you. And especially in high school, going to college, I was so excited to play with girls that were, everybody's good. Everybody has like the chance to play like on the big stage, you know what I mean? So I think just knowing I was so capable of playing with them, and my coaches were very like excited for me to come, and they were very complimentary of how I was doing in the fall when I first got there. And of course that was me like taking 5 extra strength Advil to get through practice.
Yeah.
Nobody knew I was doing that too, but I just wanted to do anything to be on the field. And of course, like sports are so fun. It's supposed to be fun. So I'm, having so much fun, like making, fun plays with my teammates and like being a part of that and cheering each other on is like the best feeling. So
it's that community, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. And I feel that's where my bestest of friends have come from. So to kind of be sidelined like that, and even if I just needed to take like one day off, I was playing 50% every other day. So I would take one practice off, then go back and play 50% in that practice. And then just like kind of seeing all the, team chemistry like play out on the field, and I wasn't part of that. I was just like heartbroken because I'm like, I have to play catch up. I have to be able to like, once I do play, I need to maximize what I'm doing on the field in that moment. And I remember there was one practice my freshman year again where, my teammates were making great passes to me, but I was in so much pain that day. And in lacrosse, and I'm assuming the same in rugby, like you have to lead people with the ball to, so you have to run onto it, stuff like that. So my teammates making great passes to me, like sharp passes and leading my stick. But if I had to step even a little bit harder, I would collapse. Like there was multiple times where I would just like fall in the middle of practice. And again, my coaches didn't really understand at that point what was going on because I was just starting to tell, my athletic trainer about it. And of course they saw my medical history and they were like, oh gosh, what's going on? But it's stuff like that where it's, it's not my teammates' fault, but I'm getting frustrated over it. And after I think there was one time where I did like get really upset about it and my coach pulled me. I don't know, like
Yeah.
I'm just so frustrated because I know I'm capable of so much, but my body won't let me. So I think that was the hardest part for me. And then just explaining to teammates that, and I didn't want my attitude to affect the rest of the team as well. So it just injuries affect you in so many different ways that it's so hard to explain to people like that dynamic of, wanting to make your team better, but you are constantly thinking about how your body is moving. And if you're going to step too hard this way, or you're going to like, you're going to get a sharp pain or anything like that. So yeah, it's really, really hard. And I think communication and explaining that to teammates is like a whole different thing. But if you have great teammates and stuff like that, like people are receptive. And I think that is the case for me, especially at Clemson.
It's almost a sense of guilt, isn't it? Like you feel like
Yeah.
you're letting your team down,
Oh, for
even
sure.
even though you're struggling with something. And that sense of wanting to be involved is something I can so deeply resonate with. And that like
Yeah.
you want more than anything to be part of the group, but when your body's not letting you, it must be so hard. And you mentioned the communication there,
Hmm.
like because I've had so many people like, and I've been very privileged to be in a position where they felt comfortable messaging me. But the conversation I've had with young boys and girls about I'm injured, but I want to be part of the team, or I feel like I'm missing out. Is there anything that maybe has helped you, or the very least something you've learned along the way? Because you mentioned communication there, because I think that's a huge part of it. So I'd love to hear from you. Is there anything that you've learned along the way that maybe helped with that feeling of guilt?
Yeah, actually. So I mean, my teammates were awesome throughout the entire thing with every year that I was here. And a lot of them would reach out to me or, come to me after practice and be like, hey, what's going on? Like, are you okay? And I would just be like, just leave me alone type of thing. And I was very just tunnel vision about what I needed to do. And I felt like not that I didn't really feel like that I was a burden necessarily. Sometimes I did, but it was more just like I wanted to keep everything to myself and I wanted to figure it out on my own. And I didn't want them to be worried about it or anything. And again, I didn't want it to be as serious as it was. So I feel like communication wise and with teammates, like something that I really wish that I had done was actually taking my teammates up on my teammates texting me asking, "Hey, let's go grab coffee and let's like take 5 minutes. Let's have a phone call. Let's talk about what's going on." Because a lot of my teammates did, but I just kind of said, "Thank you, like all good. Thank you for reaching out, but I'm all set." And I feel like I one of my favorite things to say to people is like everybody has 5 minutes. Everybody has 5 minutes to call on their way to class or do something, and it really does make a difference. And I feel like if I had kind of done that throughout my weeks, I would have made like it would have been so much better. I would have gotten closer with teammates. They would have had a better understanding of what I was going through. Because for a while, like once I started to kind of fill my teammates in, they were like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know this was happening." Like all I knew is that something was going on with your legs, and that was pretty much it. So even having those quick conversations and filling people in, it's not like a huge emotional like dump, but it's kind of letting people in a little bit. It helps, a lot. And then your teammates can kind of explain to other teammates because you don't want to have to repeat yourself 1,000 times. That can be exhausting too. So I feel like really just taking people up. If they're reaching out to you, they really care to know about what's going on. And I feel like that's what I try to do with my injured teammates now. I feel like they won't always reach out to me about it, but if I kind of open that door first and I kind of invite them to talk about it for a second, then they're more likely to do it. And I feel like that just makes a world of a difference.
No, absolutely. It's almost I mean, for you especially, I mean, given this the sheer length of time and how much this affected you, it must have made the world of difference in terms of simply being seen and almost having your almost pain recognized.
Yes, for sure, for sure. And I mean, everybody that knows me knows my shins. Like since I was in seventh grade, everybody, even from my hometown, hey Julian, like how are you doing? How are the legs? Like it's that if they know me, they know my legs. So it is very hard to like kind of separate yourself from that sometimes, but it also is good to, you know, talk to people about what you've been through. Like it's awesome what we have going on here. Like you're sharing your story, I'm sharing mine, and you get to connect with so many other people that way. And you like there are so many stories that are very similar, but I felt like I was the only one on the planet dealing with what I was going through. Because I don't know about you, but how many doctors are like, oh, well, you're 1 in a million, and this is, you know, super rare and all this stuff. I'm like, I don't want to hear that all the time.
Yeah.
So it's hard, but it is nice to kind of fill people in on like what you're going through. So
And the labeling is so interesting to me because for the longest time I was so similar to you. And in the sense that I would, you know, I didn't want to talk about it. I would hide away because I actually had a lot of, even before the major ones that I'm going through now with both my feet. It's we talked about my shoulders. I had a lot of injuries before, and you know, I'd almost be like, oh no, I'm not. I don't want to put it to one side. But especially given the severity of what's going on now, and obviously, you know, mentioned with your journey to the surgeries, that the more I actually bought in and went, you know what? Yeah, they are a part of me. Like, yeah, the issues I have, yes, they are. Like, I am going through this at the moment. And you mentioned about saving time. It really just allowed me to go, okay, they know. Okay, they know. I trust that they know, and I trust them with this situation. Even if I didn't know them incredibly well, they're allowed to make their own judgments. But it's that, yes, this is a part of me. I'm going to see it as a strength, not a weakness. And I think that is something, I think more than anything, it's almost a sense of bringing control back over the injury. It's that, yeah, I'm now the one in control of this. I'm setting the parameters rather than, as you mentioned, you know, feeling like you're letting teammates down and that sense of guilt. Because honestly, that really, really interests me. So I'm so thankful you talked about that, because that's something that I felt for such a long time. And the fact that, you know, because you don't want to affect the sessions off the field either. But you still wanted to be part of the group, but you were dying inside to want to be on the field. And I think that there's such an amazing thing there. So obviously, I was amazing to hear you talk about that. And you mentioned something there about perspective. And we chatted briefly off air about, it's amazing how much injuries translate across different themes. So how has your journey with this process maybe influenced you outside of the world of sport and injury in maybe ways you didn't expect?
Yeah, I think kind of like to piggyback off what we were just talking about too, is the idea of like, you know, I played 50% every other day, meaning I don't have as much exposure to what everybody else is getting. They don't, you know, they have all these opportunities every single day to connect with teammates, and your coaches are seeing, oh my goodness, look at this connection with this girl. And like these girls would be great together on the field, and you're just not part of that, but you don't have the opportunity. So I also think for me, you know, coaches always stress putting in the extra work and doing stuff outside of practice. But for people like you and me, especially you right now, dealing with stuff with your feet, weight bearing injuries are so brutal because you can't just go out and shoot, or you can't go out and do, you know, what everybody else is doing. So they're getting extra work and they're getting practice every single day. So for me, it was juggling, you know, how do I best maximize my day to be at the same level as them, but that wasn't just realistic for me. So I think the biggest like takeaway just from my experience with lacrosse, my career, my injury, and then just post like everything is that sometimes less is more. And I feel like that's kind of a, you know, cliche thing to say, but also like pushing yourself so much is sometimes just so like counterproductive, and going a million miles per hour every single day and not taking the chance to just slow down and be intentional about what you're doing. Like sometimes it's just counterproductive. And if you take 5 minutes to just go for a walk, sometimes that's better than doing an hour-long lift. So really just knowing your body. And I feel like for so long I was trying to advocate for my pain, and I was getting looked at like I had 7 heads, but like I was like, no, this is really like what's happening. I feel like I have knives that are stuck in my legs, and they're just like going like this against my legs. Like that's truly what it felt like. And I think, you know, the biggest thing is just knowing that you know your body better than anybody else. You know your body better than any doctor. You know, that was hard for me as well, because you're talking to experts all day long if you haven't, you know, injuries or whatever, but they don't know exactly what you're feeling no matter how much like schooling they've been through. And pain is pain. Like your 10 out of 10 pain could be somebody else's like 20 out of pain. You never know. So the pain threshold is something that, I talked about a lot with my doctors as well. And if it's affecting you every single day, it is like that. It's just acceptance. So, and that's something I still have to manage every single day, and I used to be playing in tournaments for 7 hours a day. And now I have to be careful about walking too much. It's just the reality of my situation, but it is very different. So I think acceptance is a huge thing, and just kind of that adjustment won't happen overnight too. So I think kind of planting the seed is really important too, and just giving yourself the time to make those adjustments, because again, it's been a lot on your body, but it's also been a lot on your mind. So
no, absolutely. And it's I think what I found is that society nowadays, there's almost this stigma around slowing down is a weakness or patience is a weakness. And it's like, well, hang on. Recovery inherently requires slowing down and rest, however we look at it. And I think I just love what you say there in terms of that sometimes it really is okay to take that step back and just slow down, however that looks. That's not to say that you can't push hard and do hard things. Because look, you and I, we've grown up in these sporting environments, in these hardworking elite sport environments. That's what we built our lives off. A massive part of your life and my life is like resilience and working hard and keeping going when it gets tough. Of course it is. That's the nature of our sports. I've seen some of the clips from lacrosse. It's absolutely brutal, some of the stuff that happens in some of those games.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd be terrified to get whacked by one of those sticks. But it's that idea, isn't it, that we get it. Pretty much all injured athletes out there, we know what it's like to work hard. We really do. So when we're saying slow down, it's not laziness, it's not weakness, there's no second agenda here. It's genuinely listening to your body and going, in your case, you've had to adjust to that change of all of a sudden going from playing for 7 hours to suddenly being careful how much you walk for 7 minutes or something, or how far you walk for 7 minutes. And I think that perspective shift from, and I know I've had it before where I'll openly say, 2-3 years ago, this idea that constantly pushing harder in the gym, lifting more weights, and a bit of a stigma around rest days. Like you had to have a rest day the day before a game. But other than that, we were back in the gym. And it's amazing how it took going through such a serious, weight-bearing injury, on both sides to suddenly go, okay, now's the time to slow down. And I think hopefully more and more, the more we can have these conversations here, the more, young athletes, injured athletes can have that perspective shift almost earlier on in the rehab journey to know that it is okay to slow down. Yes. And I think just building off all of that, and as we mentioned this idea of the shift you've had from playing 7 hours to suddenly, being careful how you walk, I'd really love to explore this kind of life after sport. And I think obviously it's a massive part of both what you talk about and I talk about, that this idea of reshaping your identity. So I'd be really interested to hear, almost from a broader perspective, how have you found everything? Because I know I found the journey incredibly difficult. So I'd be interested to hear kind of how you found it all.
Yeah, it's obviously, there's been seasons. There's been different seasons of like how I've dealt with it. So initially it was very, very hard for me. I chose to stay around the team. I was still a part of the team. I just graduated last week, but I stayed involved with the team the entire time.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Thank you. So I, obviously loved watching my team and stuff like that, but I had such a hard time going there, and I would often have to leave so many times because I would just get so upset watching people do what I just couldn't do. And then also, I want to say too, everyone's pain is very valid and everything, but hearing people come off the field and be like, oh gosh, we gotta run today, or we're doing this drill that I hate, it's so hard, and that is just not what I wanted to hear when I was there and I was in that environment. So I think that
100%.
was just worst little series of events. And obviously if I was playing, I'd be like, yeah, shoot, we got to do this drill. So like, I understand it, but it's just where I was in the moment. It was just not good for me. So, and I think for me, outside of sports, just kind of recognizing that you have no choice but to be in the moment. And that is one of the biggest things that I've kind of learned from this. I can dwell on the past all day long, but like, what is that really doing for me? And also in the future, yes, you can do things to kind of set yourself up, but anything could happen. So like, you really don't have any choice but to be where your feet are and really maximize that moment. So that's kind of been my kind of like life motto moving forward. And then also like, you really can't blame yourself for past decisions and how you've handled things in the past. Like give yourself some grace, because you can only make the best decisions with the tools that you have in the moment. You're making the best decisions based on how your body's feeling, what your coaches are saying, all these things. So I think for a while I got hard on myself and how I dealt with things, because it really just felt like I was a different person. But at the end of the day, like, that's, again, acceptance. That's how it was for me. And I really didn't feel like I had the right support from different people. And that, obviously was very hard for me. But knowing that, I can kind of make adjustments as I continue. And, I've been retired for 2 years, but it still, gets me upset when I just watched my team play the other day, and I'm like, I had to turn it off because I was just dwelling on what I was missing. But then again, like, that's going to happen. It is a grief process of, you thought you were going to have X career or, whatever you're going to do. And for that to be like kind of ripped away from you, if that's from injury or whatever the case may be, you're still going through that grief process. And then it affects you for years after. So I think for me, it's just been giving myself that grace that, I know I deserve. My body deserves the grace and all of that. So yeah, that's been kind of important for me after.
I think what's so pleasing to hear and amazing to hear, just kind of the type of person you are with all this, that it's almost like you've allowed yourself to feel proud of yourself, that of the work that's gone in. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, I think that was huge for me too, because I saw a sports psychologist since I got here on campus. And that was just because of injuries and all these other things outside of sports that I was dealing with. And, that was the biggest thing she pointed out for me. She's like, look at all of these things that you've already gone through. And like, you're 12 years old dealing with all of these like injuries, and you stayed persistent the entire time and you were able to get recruited. So stuff like that, I'm like, wow, that was pretty good to me. But it took a while to kind of recognize that. I know, a little pat on the back.
Little pat on the back, yeah.
Yeah. So it is definitely hard. And I mentioned too, that I'm starting to speak a little bit more about this, but I actually, let's see, I think it was like 3 months after I medically retired, I ended up being hospitalized too, because it was very, very confusing for me, but I literally felt like I was watching my life on aerial view. Like, it wasn't actually me going through the motions. It was the weirdest experience ever. And I didn't see consequences to my actions. I just didn't care about anything. It was very, very scary. And, when you're telling sports psychologists about that sort of thing, it's alarming. And I, didn't care about school. Like, I got up and left class one time because I didn't want to answer a question, and I was just a whole different person. And from there, like, I was like, my mental health, like, obviously very much declined at that point. And again, that was mainly due to because like I was so physically limited, and it was like my world got flipped upside down. I was once this athlete, everybody knew me as an athlete, and now it just got ripped away from me. And like, I felt like I couldn't even walk up and down the stairs. I wasn't part of my team like I wanted to be part of it, and stuff like that was super hard. And so I ended up, being hospitalized for about a week, my sophomore year. And that was an experience in and of itself, but it just goes to show, like, I'm not really, it's hard for me to talk about that, because I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. I'm never telling anybody about that. That was awful. But truly, like, it is kind of like, it shows how important it is to really take care of athletes after they're retired or injured and all the above, because it really can be like a huge decline very, very quickly. So.
Well, look, Julian, honestly, on a personal note, I think you're incredibly brave talking about that, genuinely. And I really do mean that. I think you'll be amazed and rightly proud of just how many people will genuinely resonate with what you've just said. Because the fact that we sit here, and when we have these discussions, and when I think back to the times that when I've really, really struggled with my mental health, is that it just felt like I was losing time. It just felt like I was stuck, and pain does funny things to you, especially this long-term pain. I mean, yeah, there's amazing in, I don't know how the word to describe it, and incredible journey with this chronic pain you've had. And it does funny things to you when it stays there for a long time, and when you're constantly pushed away from your community, your friends, and it impacts your normal life. And because as you know, you and I know, but we can find it so hard to explain to people, injuries and pain doesn't stay in the coffee shop. It doesn't stay in the gym. It travels home with you. It getting out of bed, and you mentioned school. And I think just really important for me to say on a personal note, that's incredibly brave of you to talk about. So thank you so much for that. And I think that that feeling of losing time is such a relatable thing, because we're not, and coming back to this idea of, feeling a bit lost and feeling that sense of isolation it's not just feeling isolated from other people. And you mentioned yourself there, you have some amazing medical support staff during your time, but it's almost the idea you feel isolated from yourself because you have transitioned in your head anyway. And we'll come on to the flip side of this in a second, that in your head, this idea that you transitioned from, this Julian who was playing so much lacrosse and was an amazing athlete, suddenly, even through all the pain, but then suddenly to this person who, I imagine in your mind, this idea that, almost just wanted to get through the day, just wanted to take things day by day and, get to the next one. And hopefully we get another test and whatnot. So I'd be interested to hear from you, were there any things that helped with that process, or maybe helped in your mind try and, almost stop blaming yourself and then try and, understand that there is still a Julian here. Just because you're not playing lacrosse doesn't mean the lacrosse player in Julian has gone.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question too. And I feel like we talked about it a little bit, kind of the acceptance aspect. I think that was kind of hard for me at first because I felt like I was kind of running away from this injury the entire time. But you can't ignore it. For stuff like that, where there's weight bearing, anything you do, you're going to feel it. And for me, like, my pain is constant. Like, as I'm sitting here right now, like, I have a baseline pain that I feel, and then there's other things that make it worse. So for me, I think what's hard to explain to people is the idea that it almost feels like torture. Like those little torture tactics where it could be like snapping a band against your wrist, but it's
100%.
all day long. It's like, you think of it happening once and you're like, oh, that kind of hurt, but it's over. But for stuff that's chronic, or someone that's plagued with all different kinds of injuries, like, it's the mental torture of like constantly going through something, constantly being stimulated in that sort of way is so exhausting. And that is something that a lot of people just won't understand. And like, thank goodness a lot of people don't know what that's like. I don't want people to know what that's like, but it is so hard to, explain that to people and really paint a picture for what it looks like for injured athletes or people with chronic anything. Or again, like, various injuries as well. So I feel like for me, I hesitate to say this because it isn't as easy as it's going to sound, but it is kind of just taking a second. Like, I feel like it was just one day I'm like, look, I can't do anything about this. This is what it is. And I, need to give myself the credit of how much I put into this. And I did exhaust myself trying to get back, and I did everything in my power. There was no stone that was not unturned. So like, I hit it from every single angle. I was very diligent. I was positive. I was patient with doctors. And this is just what, my situation ended up being like. And for me, then I was able to kind of flip the script and think about it in a different light. I worked my ass off to do everything that I did. And, from now, like with my Instagram and my social media, how I've kind of tried to build this, it's just kind of painting a picture of what I've been doing for the past year. Every time there's somebody that's injured, like, I will take that extra step and do what I would have wanted someone else to do for me. So I'm the first person there to text them. And truly, like, I really want to be there for people that are going through that, because people that just, if you're in the training room and, your teammates are walking by going out to practice and nobody comes over and says something to you, that could be such a tiny thing in their mind, but it's huge for someone like you in that position. So I feel like that just gives me that perspective. And now I just kind of want to spread awareness of all of the realities of what it's like. Because I kept this all to myself, but when I started posting on social media, everyone's like, oh, me too, you as well. So it is a universal experience for some people. So I feel like that's, how I've been able to find some meaning out of it, is to, know that I'm not the only person on the planet dealing with it, and it can really help other people and bring you closer to people that have been through something similar.
Look, I think you're doing an amazing job. And what I really, really love hearing you say that is that I can honestly say that is the exact same why behind what I do. It really is. And I think more than anything, that's just a testimony to the fact that these experiences are truly universal, in the sense that they really are experienced by so many, young athletes out there, and just the fact that it's so hard to have that transition and manage that transition. And you're so right. And I can think back to sessions now and people said, "Oh, so my nickname's Bez, my surname's Berry, so Bez." It's like, oh, you're right, Bez. Like, yeah, whatever. And it's like, it makes the world of difference. Even though you might just be doing rehab on the sideline or doing something completely different, the fact that they've acknowledged you as part of this community meant the world to me. And I just love what you're doing. I really, really do. And I think you're having a really big good impact on people. I think even you probably won't be aware of just how many people you are actually helping just by talking about it. Because as you have personal experience of, that talking about genuinely is one of the hardest steps. I think just coming on to the end here, I think I just want to briefly touch on that sense of grief you mentioned, because it is a sense of grief, that transition. And as someone amazingly explained it to me, that if we picture injuries almost as a fist, or so our experience with injury as a fist, that if we imagine ourselves being injured as a palm facing down, this idea that we're letting go of something, we're losing something, it can have all sorts of negative connotations that you and I have definitely experienced about, blaming ourselves and loss of identity and who am I without this. Then someone explained it to me once that, well, if you have a fist but have it facing upwards, this idea that, well, hang on, you haven't lost anything. It's still in there. Your lacrosse is still there. It's just simply giving space for new things to grow. And from what you've described, that sounds almost exactly how almost you've managed and dealt and accepted this kind of injury journey. And kind of just building off that, is there any advice that you maybe would have, or some language that you wish you could have told yourself, either maybe at 12 when this very first began, or as you mentioned, as it kind of, continue to almost snowball as it went into college? Is there any kind of advice about that identity shift that you wish you could have told yourself before?
Yeah, I love that little analogy. That's really cool. I feel like for me, I think the easiest thing for me to remember, I actually have it tattooed on my wrist now. It's just presence. And I feel like that's like an easy thing I can look down and just like that. It's just presence is sufficient. So if you are a teammate or even with yourself, that's been a mindset shift for me too, is the idea like my presence is sufficient for other people. Their presence is sufficient to me. So even if you don't have all the words, all the language, you don't know how to help people, if you just go over and you acknowledge somebody just with your body language or a little tap on the back, or just be like, hang in there, like something like that. If someone's going through a really hard rehab session, I think that's really important, because I feel like a lot of people were hesitant to come up to me and didn't want to say the wrong thing, but sometimes you don't have to say anything at all. And I feel like that kind of applies to myself as well. So like, I don't have to have all of the answers for myself either. And just kind of being present with myself. And I think about it with my younger self too. I, look back on old videos of me and I'm like, dang, like, look how much she's doing. And like, it is sad that I was so hard on myself. So I feel like being in the moment, being present, and just being there for other people in whatever form that takes is sufficient. And people know if you're trying to make an effort, and it really does mean a lot. So that would be my thing. I love the saying that presence is sufficient.
Well, honestly, I absolutely love that. Genuinely, I really do, because it encompasses so much of what injuries and injured athletes genuinely need to hear. And I think there's like the recognition, the acknowledgement, the simply being seen, because injuries make you feel invisible. And I imagine that most people listening to this, if not everyone, can absolutely resonate with that feeling. So look, Julian, I think we'll bring it to a close there. But honestly, thank you so much. Genuinely, I think your insights, particularly around the teammate aspect of all of this, I think really stuck with me. And I could think back to the elements on time, and there's times when I've been injured before, and when it's been hard to manage, but also when it's been good to manage, as you mentioned at the end, in terms of when it goes well and the teammates can help acknowledge you, it can genuinely make the world of difference, particularly these young athletes, because as we both know, it's thrown around a lot, this idea that, oh, you're young, it'll be fine. Not true when you're in it. I think there's a big element of, well, hang on a minute, but I want to be playing with this team, and so all my memories come from, my best friends come from. So to hear you say some tools that people listening to might be able to help out and help almost engage in that discussion with their teammates is everything. So Julian, thank you so much. I will make sure to tag all of your social media underneath, because genuinely, like, this is I'm not remotely trying to be like some sort of paid promotion thing, but honestly, I would heavily encourage everyone to go and look at her page. Genuinely, it's some amazing content in terms of, as everything we've talked about here, you express really well on there. So Julian, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. This has been awesome. And I absolutely love everything that you've been doing as well. People really need to hear more about people's stories, and your story as well is amazing. So I appreciate you having me on.
That's very kind. Thank you so much.